What's shaking? My name's Cam, welcome back to another video. First of all, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, whatever you're celebrating. I really do hope you're having a good one, lots of family, lots of food, lots of laughs. Mine's been pretty good, I hope yours has as well. Immediately moving on. So the Prime Video TV show The Wheel of Time, based on the book series The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, has finally dropped in its entirety, season 1. You might have noticed that up until now I haven't actually made any videos on the specific episodes themselves. I could have, and I considered doing it. God knows it's been helping a lot of other channels. The views coming in for those videos have been insane. But I didn't because, to be honest, I just don't think there's anything I could have said about those episodes that weren't already being said, and being said better by channels like, Captured in Words, Daniel Green. They were doing episode breakdowns, they were doing a great job of it. As tempted as I was to try and dip my feet in for the hype, there was nothing for me to say. But at this point, the season's out, I've watched it all, I have a lot of thoughts, like the entire rest of the internet. And I would love to do a season review, basically unscripted, just off the cuff, me talking about all of the things I enjoyed and liked about the show, and unfortunately, the much larger portion of things that I didn't like, up to things that I absolutely hated. I was gonna make this video when the last episode actually came out, what was it, like last Friday now, but I decided to wait a few days because I did that with The Witcher Season 2. I pretty much made a video review for the season as soon as I finished watching it. I was still so hyped up on the ending to that show that I kind of approached it more positively than I think I genuinely felt about the show, or that season, I mean. Don't get me wrong, I really did enjoy Season 2 of The Witcher. I still think it was really good, but there are a lot of criticisms that I have now for that season that I've sat with and reflected on and thought about that unfortunately I didn't really talk about in the video itself. I've taken the time for The Wheel of Time Season 1 to really sit with my feelings and see how I feel, because my feelings after finishing it were actually pretty negative, and I was like, maybe I just need to sleep on this. So I did, and some of my feelings have changed a little bit, but I'll get to that. Obviously this video and the comments below, I imagine, are going to be full of spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, if you haven't finished the season yet, then this probably isn't the video to watch. Save it to your watch later playlist. Come back later, I'll be waiting for you. Otherwise, if you have watched it, or if you just don't care about spoilers, then welcome. I make videos every single week on fantasy and horror books, so I would love it if you stuck around, if that's your kind of thing, if you're a reader as well. Is that you, nerd? You read books? Okay, Wheel of Time Season 1. I will preface this review by saying that I have read Book 1, and I have only read Book 1. I understand that the show, or this season, added in a lot of stuff from later books, so there was some things during the season that I didn't really understand, but I'm okay with that. And there's also a really big, important point I want to make before I really get into it as well, and that is that I do not care so much about changes from the source material. I know that has been a huge part of the, quite frankly, insane discourse around this show. People have either been fanatically hating it or fanatically defending it, and the people just in the middle, kind of like me, have been a lot more quiet. But it's crazy. People are really angry at the other side on this one. I don't mind when an adaptation makes changes from the book. I know a lot of people hate that. I don't mind, on the condition that it makes sense and that it results in either as good of a story or better. Because I get it, a TV show is not the same medium as a book. Adaptations just physically cannot do all of the same things in storytelling that the book does. That's just a fact. You have to live with it, you have to get over it. It's gonna happen and it's gonna keep happening. Move on. But again, those choices have to make sense, and there were a lot of choices during this season, especially in that controversial final episode, episode 8, that mind-boggling. They were baffling. I don't like what the I guess I'll be more specific, and I guess I'll break this video down into 2 parts, starting with criticism, or the bad stuff, however you want to label it, and then the later half of the video will be the positives, because I do want to kind of finish the video on a bit of a positive note. And as always, the obligatory YouTuber disclaimer: If you disagree with me, that's fine. Just don't be a dick about it. I know it's annoying hearing YouTubers say this, having to give that disclaimer, but especially in the fantasy community, we kind of have to, because people, even when I make that disclaimer, people get crazy. They get mad. They get really mad. It's just an opinion from some dude online. Just relax. Anyway, here are my criticisms. Look, if someone asked me outright what I thought of Season 1 of Wheel of Time, I would say, nah. And it's not that the whole season was nah, it's just that there was a lot of good stuff and some really bad stuff, and they kind of leveled each other out. I wouldn't tell anyone that watching this season was a waste of time, but I wouldn't actively go out and tell people, oh, you have to watch this. My criticisms are going to be out of order in the actual timeline of the TV show, but if you're watching this, I doubt you care. You've probably already seen the show anyway. So I'm going to start with one of the things that bothered me the most, and that is what they did to Loyal. Loyal in the book is one of my favorite characters. In his brief time in the first book of The Wheel of Time, The Eye of the World, he is an extremely charming and kind of fantastical creature slash man slash character that toes this perfect balance between taking us out of the real world while still keeping us very grounded and bound to an almost relatable kind of morality in this insanely dark fantasy world. The character of Loyal just has this kind of charisma that's very enjoyable to read about. He's an Ogier, he's not human, he's this large, friendly, almost beast of a man. He is by most definitions the very classic fantasy trope of the friendly giant. There's a lot of them out there, and it's one of my favorite tropes. It is very usually one of my favorite characters in fantasy stories like Hodor. I can't remember the name of him, but the friendly giant from Black Leopard Red Wolf was one of the only things I liked about that book. Rock from Stormlight Archive, those are the kind of characters I like. Characters that are big and intimidating and could clap anybody in a fight. They're usually more peaceful and gentle. It's a trope I like, it's a character I like, and I'm really not a fan of a lot of the stuff that they did with Loyal in the TV show versus the books. I want to say immediately that the actor was fantastic. He did a great job. He brought the exact kind of charisma that I would want to Loyal. The voice sounded really nice. They didn't completely sideline him in the TV show, at least until the final episode. But again, this is the criticisms portion of the video, so what I have to say is that what was this, man? Is it just me? Am I an asshole? Or does this, it looks really bad. I don't, look, the thing with Loyal is that he's inhuman. He's got these, big ears. Like I said, he's kind of like a beast of a man, and I just didn't get that with whatever this costume was. I get that there's a lot of reasons practically why they wouldn't have been able to make him look as good as maybe Nivellen in season 2 of The Witcher, which ironically is a lot closer to what I would have imagined Loyal to look like. I get why they couldn't do that. Loyal is around a fair bit towards the end of the show. They didn't want to put in that much CGI, and I think if they did, it would have looked bad anyway. But at the very least, I would have hoped that they would have gone with some kind of hairpiece that didn't look like it was about to fall off his head all the time. And I'm not talking about the hairstyle, by the way, I just mean the actual hair itself doesn't look real. And the ears, I refuse to believe that it would have been that much effort to give him the Ogier ears, which are one of the most iconically noticeable things about his physical look. And I suppose while I'm talking about Loyal, I should mention, spoiler alert again, they killed Loyal. In the final episode of the season, Loyal is stabbed and presumably killed by Padden Fane. And again, I have no problem with the show making changes from the book if those changes make sense and are good changes, result in good storytelling. But what? Loyal, as far as I understand it, is quite a major character. So there's pretty much two outcomes here. Either Loyal is dead, or Loyal survives, and there was no point in him being stabbed. It was just a cheap trick on the audience to try and pull at our heartstrings. But I didn't feel sad, I felt pissed off. I was like, why? Why? I don't know. I hate it. If Loyal is actually dead, I think that is one of the most mind-bogglingly stupid decisions, and if he survived, like I said, what was the point? The reveal, or the twist, the Dragon Reborn. Who is it? How could we possibly know? I knew who it would be because I've read the first book, but I'm positive that even if I hadn't read the first book, it would have been overwhelmingly obvious from episode 1. Simply because, and maybe there was no way around this, but Rand is he exerts main dude energy. And I even asked one of my friends who's been watching the show as well, who they thought the Dragon Reborn would be, and they guessed it right by like episode 2. Everyone was talking about like how good how they did the twist was, and I'll agree that it wasn't as good in the book. You know, Rand finding out he was the Dragon Reborn, it was really obvious in that as well. Everyone's saying it was much better of a reveal in the show, and maybe that's true, but I still don't think it was that good. I don't really see how he figured it out. It just kind of said, you've known all along, and then he's like, I guess I have known all along. It keeps giving us a flashback to him in the ways on the bridge using channeling to throw a Trolloc over the edge, but the rest of them have all channeled as well, so I don't really see how that is a deciding factor in him being the Dragon Reborn. Like I said, it pretty much boils down to him just knowing that it was him. It was set up to be like this twist. It was edited within the show to be like a moment, and I was just like, okay, like, yeah, okay. Another thing I didn't like really quickly is that they managed to take Rand as a complex character who was struggling a lot with not just his feelings for Egwene, but also, and more importantly, the inner turmoil within himself, with the channeling and his life being flipped upside down and finding out his dad's not really his dad. He might be the future destruction of this world. There's so much complicated layers within that emotional cake, and in the show, it's pretty much boiled down to, but I want to be with Egwene. It's not fair. Rand as a character, I just didn't like. I get a lot of his motivations. I get why he would be so distrusting of Moiraine. I get why he would be so salty about Egwene. I get it. But it was also really annoying that so many of the characters that the show follows were just so miserable. I mean, they have good reason to be, I know, fair. But Moiraine, right? She's this cold, almost emotionless person. Lan is kind of straight-faced, straight-talking kind of dude. He doesn't show a lot of emotion either. Nynaeve was perpetually pissed off. Perrin barely said 2 words in the entire show because he was busy mourning the wife that he accidentally chopped in half. Matt's dialogue was kind of the only enjoyable relief, and he ended up getting, sick from the dagger, so that was pretty abruptly stopped. At a certain point, maybe by like episode 4 or something, I just got a bit tired of all of the whinging and the complaining and just the miserable atmosphere. And like I said, I get why that would be the case, why they would be feeling like that, but I never got that feeling when I was reading the book, and again, I hate to keep making comparisons between the two. I think the show should be able to stand apart as its own thing outside of the book, but that's kind of my point as well. And the book managed to include enough fun and heartwarming moments to really level it out, where I don't think the show did the same. I didn't really feel much of a connection between all of these characters, they just kind of grew up together. I didn't really feel that these characters really cared about each other. I mean, in the first episode, I think it is, when Perrin walks out with his dead wife in his arms, Rand doesn't even go over to support him immediately. I get that his dad is like really ailing right there as well. Maybe he didn't want to leave his dad, but at the very least, I feel like he should have run over there for a minute or two just to be like, what happened, man? Are you okay? I don't know. I just don't know. Let me quickly mention that baffling love triangle subplot that happened and was gone in like 10 seconds flat between Perrin, Egwene, and Rand, where both Rand and Perrin were apparently in love with Egwene. That had absolutely no impact on the story. It was a conflict that rose and vanished literally in the space of like 1 minute. It wasn't in the book, so unless it comes up in the later books, I have no idea why they included it. And if it doesn't, if there is no kind of subplot about Perrin being in love with Egwene in the later books, then that's even worse. What that was is a thing that a lot of TV shows try to do to create a conflict in an episode that might be considered filler. They'll have this episode written out that has no action or anything like exciting that gets your blood pumping, and they're like, oh, well, we need something in this episode to like rev people up, sprinkle in a little two dudes fighting over a chick. People love that, obviously. There was a suggestion with it that Perrin only married the character that they added into the show that he accidentally killed because he was in love with Egwene. That's kind of a bombshell that had absolutely no impact on the story. Kind of made the relationship dynamic between Perrin and Egwene, which I had initially thought was a very sweet friendship, especially when they escape the White Cloaks camp. I was like, this is a great moment for these two characters. And it was tainted with the retroactive addition of Perrin being jealously in love with her. Yo, why was that like final battle in episode 8, why was that darker than like the Battle of Winterfell in Game of Thrones? Ah, damn it, I made a reference to Game of Thrones when talking about Wheel of Time. That's damn it. Another quick criticism I'm going to throw in for the finale of the show is that I think it's really dumb that, is it 5 magic users or channelers were able to wipe out like, what is it, 10 or 20,000 Trollocs and like 50 Fades? I'm sure within the context of the Wheel of Time world that's possible, but I thought it was really, I didn't like that. I thought it was really anticlimactic. They were building and building and building towards this, the fall of the city, and we're gonna have to give it everything we've got, and it's gonna be huge, and we might die, we're probably gonna die. And it ended up being 10 guys with crossbows on a wall, and 5 channelers sending out a magic nuke. So all of those rants that I just had, those are my biggest complaints about the Wheel of Time. But if I could do a kind of general summary of why I had so much distaste with this show, or this first season of the show, it would be that I think a lot of the storytelling and the character work was extremely sloppy. Some of it just straight up didn't make sense and won't make sense unless you've read the books, and that is not a good precedent to set when you are adapting something. When you adapt something, it needs to stand on its own. People need to be able to watch it without having read the source material. And I just don't think that's entirely true with this show. I could sit here and I could say that, you know, I understand there were complications, there was COVID, there was an actor leaving the set, the guy who played Matt. And yeah, sure, I'm willing to take that into account, but there are a lot of problems with this show that have nothing to do with those things. Storytelling decisions that I can't imagine had anything to do with those things. Changes made from the books that did not result in a better or at least equally good outcome. Changes were made that resulted in a worse outcome. But look, with all that said, I am genuinely not a very negative person when it comes to my reviews. I'm an extremely easy person to please. You probably know that if you watched my last video where I reviewed Season 2 of The Witcher. I will admit now that I overlooked a lot of things that were bad decisions made for that season. Not because I'm defensive of the show, just because I'm an easy guy to please. It's really as simple as that. So I don't want you to hear all my criticism and say, God, this guy's just, he loves to hate. He loves to hate, doesn't he? Because I don't. It doesn't bring me any pleasure to point out all of these things I didn't like about this show. I'm not a diehard Wheel of Time fan. I only read the first book this year, but I was really excited for this show because I want lots more fantasy shows and I want them to succeed, because the more that succeed, the more we'll get and the more great fantasy books we will see adapted. Most of the reviews you see from me are going to be pretty positive, and I don't like dwelling on the bad stuff. I usually don't even give star reviews because I prefer just to point out what I liked and what I didn't and let people make up their own mind from what I said. Putting a star rating on stuff just kind of feels like I'm putting it in this box when my feelings on books and shows are a much larger spectrum. I could have a 3-star book that I enjoyed more than a book that I rate 4 stars, but I might have given that one 4 stars because it was that author's first book. It's very complicated. So it's with all that said that I am glad I can now finally move on to the praise. A lot of people said they didn't like the CGI in this show, which is kind of confusing to me because I thought it was pretty good. I mean, don't let people fool you into thinking that The Wheel of Time had a small budget, because it didn't. Season 1 of The Wheel of Time might not have had as big of a budget as other huge shows, but it still had a big old budget. That budget be so thick that when it jump, it clap, trust me. And look, I think the CGI was pretty good. It didn't blow me away, but at the very least in that first episode when the Trollocs appeared, a lot of people said they didn't like it. I thought they looked amazing. It pretty much shot my expectations through the roof for the show. I loved episode 1. The Trolloc invasion of the Two Rivers I thought was better in the show than it was in the book. I know people are going to flame me for saying that, but in the book we pretty much just see the Trollocs that attack Rand and his dad, and then he goes to town and he sees the aftermath. I was happy that we got to see the actual siege on the town, and I love that it was bloody and it was violent. I thought it was good. I also really liked the effect of the magic, which is another thing that a lot of people hated, but I noticed that they made it, and I feel like it was on purpose, they made it look a lot more like threads, and threads are a large theme of the show. It's even in the opening intro to the show is threads. The threads are everywhere, and if you are familiar with the Wheel of Time lore, not that you need to be, but if you're familiar with the lore, the idea is that all of the people in this world are connected to the great cosmic wheel by threads. That's why they say that the wheel weaves as the wheel wills. So this idea of the one power being flown through these threads that the Aes Sedai can control, I like that. I thought it looked good. I enjoyed it, especially when they were gentling Loghain. That whole sequence with Loghain and the Aes Sedai, loved it. That was probably one of my favorite moments of the show entirely. It was fantastic. The actor for Loghain was terrifying. I think he brought a real intensity that wasn't just pure madness. I think if you put a lot of other actors in that role where they're being touched by madness, they would just go full Jared Leto Joker. I think he did a good job. He kept it cold and controlled. Another positive I would say was the acting. I thought the acting was really good. There were a lot of moments that blew me away as far as acting goes. The actor for Lan in the whole sequence where he's mourning his friend that he grew up with and trained with was heartbreaking. Rosamund Pike is already an extremely well-known and prolific actress, so she obviously did a great job as Moiraine, being able to express so much emotion through quite literally being emotionless. She's kind of this cold and extremely closed off and controlled woman, and yet with just a look she can tell us pretty much exactly how she feels in any certain situation. I already said before, the actor for Loyal and I would say the actor for Matt were extremely charismatic and charming and made the show fun in the moments that they were the center of attention. I did really like Perrin at the start, and I really liked Perrin in the book, but as the show went on, all of the moping just kind of became a bit too much. They didn't really give the actor a lot to work with when it came to Perrin. His whole thing throughout the entire show is either sad or angry, and that's it. And not like sad where you actually get to express how sad you are. It's just closed off, moping, won't talk to anyone. That might make sense for the character having accidentally just murdered his wife. I keep laughing when I say that. I don't know why that's funny. It makes sense for the character that he would be feeling those things, but I'm sure there were a lot of storytelling opportunities where he could have explored his range a bit more. Another positive I would say is that the locations and the settings, which I think is one of the most important things when it comes to fantasy, both in books and in movies and television, I think they did a great job. I think they did great. I think it's obvious they didn't have access to the kind of locations that you would have for a big budget blockbuster movie, and they still managed to catch a lot of that exciting atmosphere in the city sequences or when a character is looking out across this fantasy landscape. Some of the costuming in this show was out of this world, looked so good. Some of it looked like it was pulled out of a costume store closet, but a lot of it looked great. Not just passable, great. Better than good. I think that the romance between Lan and Nynaeve was built on a lot more in the show than it was in the book. In the book it kind of just threw me off completely. I had no idea that they even liked each other, and then all of a sudden they're professing their love. In the show you see it come into place a bit more slowly and believably. in my opinion. There was a quote from the book that they put in the show that I actually really liked. "I will hate the man you choose, because it is not me." I really like that quote, and I'm glad they carried it across. On that note, I also like how the show handled the complicated relationship between Ward and the Aes Sedai as well, in particular Lan and Moraine. I like how it's somehow platonic, but also extremely intimate. They did a really good job of getting that across, because as far as I'm aware, the bond between a Ward and the Aes Sedai is not inherently romantic, but they are extremely connected, and it is an intimate and personal bond. I got that. I didn't feel like they were harboring boners for each other, so that was good. The music? Great. We didn't see much of him, but Tom, great character. I love that they made him they made him look like a hot grandpa. Great idea, and I'm not being sarcastic. I actually think that adds a lot more character and flavor. It's a bit of a shame that we didn't get to see him interact with more of the group outside of just Rand and Matt, but I also liked how he had kind of a mentorish or fatherish relationship with those boys as time went on, so that's good. Like I said, this video is unscripted and off the cuff, so I'm kind of struggling to think of more things I thoroughly enjoyed about the show. I'm kind of coming up with more things that I didn't like the more I talk. For example, how brief and kind of blink and you miss it the whole sequence in the Ways was with the Black Wind. That felt a lot more dangerous and taxing on the characters and emotionally draining on the characters in the book. I'm disappointed that it happened and was over so quickly in the show, but that's the thing with this show. It was 8 episodes and they were trying to tell way too much of a story. Obviously, I'm not the first one to say that. It's a little bit confusing to me that they had so little time to tell this story, and they tried to throw in stuff from later books into it as well. Look, I'm sorry if it feels like I'm being a negative Nancy. Like I said before, I genuinely don't do much negative reviews. I'm a very easy guy to please, but I didn't think this season was very good. And it's not because they changed things from the book, it's because they made changes from the book that resulted in a worse story. But how about you let me know what you think? I'm sure you've got thoughts, I'm sure you've got opinions. If you really disagree with me and want to start a fight, look, okay, it's not a big deal, okay? It's just my opinion, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. But if you're still here, first of all, thank you so much. If you read a lot of fantasy books, then I would love it if you subscribed, if you stuck around it. Maybe check out some of my other videos. I've got plenty, and I've got plenty more to come. Otherwise, I will chat with you in the comments. I really appreciate you watching, and damn it, I hope you have a fantastic New Year's. I hope you get a New Year's smooch. Okay, have a good one. Catch ya.